As long as console gaming has been around, at least since the NES, there have been games based on the superhero genre. It seemed to be a perfect place for fans to play as their favorite heroes. And yet, there's always been a major problem. That being that every game has almost always been the same. So how's it going, everyone? Welcome to Goshen's Games. If you're new here, hopefully you enjoy yourself and hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Today we're going to talk about Spider-Man on PS4 and how it changed the superhero genre for gaming. See, back in the 80s and 90s, companies were quick to jump on the superhero hype train. And with the ever-growing popularity of video games, it was the perfect place to do so. The problem, as I mentioned, was that they were pretty much all the same. Every superhero game was a platformer or beat-em-up style game. The reason for this was because they were easy to make on the consoles at the time, and since they only required a few skin swaps, they could have new enemies or characters easily put into the games. And while these games were fun, it doesn't take away that there was no real substance to these games. Now, I understand that at the time there were hardware limitations, but this also continued to persist through the modern day consoles, with Spider-Man PS4 actually being no different. But for once, the game was so much more. You see, I had this stigma for the longest time that superhero games sucked. Spider-Man on the PS1 tried to do something different, and to a degree it worked, but it wasn't truly amazing. I appreciated what they did with it, but it was a very clunky game at best. And dare I mention Superman 64? It wasn't really until Batman Arkham Asylum that there was a superhero game that represented the character that was featured properly. Arkham Asylum focused a lot on the detective skills of Batman, as well as bringing in a grand story that spanned 4 games. But there was still an issue. You see, with these games, these issues never really went away as the games progressed. And as each subsequent game released, the problems only made themselves more present as it continued. These issues were stiff movement in combat and navigation in the open world being a big problem in games such as Arkham City and Arkham Knight. Now, I'll admit, when Spider-Man for the PS4 was announced, I was skeptical. I thought, oh great, another superhero game that's just like a cash grab. And when the game released, I didn't flock to the stores to buy it like everyone else did. And as more and more people told me to buy it, I wanted to just buy it less and less. Mostly due to the game feeling overhyped at this point, which would lead me to being disappointed if I did play it. And up until the point I actually played the game, I didn't watch any live streams or videos of the game, and the little bit of combat footage I did see, I quickly wrote off as being a copy of the Arkham series. Eventually, I picked up the Game of the Year edition, as it was on sale at a local Target for $20. And since it had been some time since the game released, everyone had stopped hyping the game up for me and telling me that I should play it. So finally, I did. And oh my god, was it an experience. For the first time in my lifetime of playing video games and loving comic books, I was finally happy and excited to be playing a superhero game. It was surreal. Insomniac Games had captured the very essence of Spider-Man. From the very minute you turn the game on and hear the theme for the music being beautifully played by an orchestra, it lets you know that this was something special. When it comes to a character like Spider-Man, it's very important to capture not only the superhero persona, but also Peter Parker. And Yuri Lowenthal does just that. His acting as both Peter and Spider-Man sets the tone for the entire game. It even goes as far as making me forget I was playing a game, and started to make me feel like I was watching a movie. The more I played the game, the more I noticed. And the more that I noticed, the more I realized all the love and care that went into this game. From all the details that you can find on all the suits, to the quips during combat. It was all here. This was a game I had been waiting for. Even the story was engaging. It drew me in and kept me invested in a way that games like Last of Us had done years prior. And as much as I began to fall in love with the game, there was always something that did bother me. And these were the segments you had to play as MJ or Miles. The segments broke up the pacing of the game and honestly were quite boring in comparison to the rest of the game. And yet, this wasn't enough to really make me think less of the game. Obviously, this game was a massive success. So much that it spawned a spin-off game, Miles Morales, which I would argue is the superior game. And it has a sequel coming. And much like the MCU did for the movies, this game reinvigorated the comic book genre of gaming. Though with games like the Avengers flopping pretty badly, and Guardians of the Galaxy not nearly as popular, it goes to show that Insomniac seems to have the formula down when it comes to comic book games. So what's next? Where do we go from here? Well, besides the Spider-Man sequel, we know Insomniac is releasing a Wolverine game. But what else would they do? Or other companies do? Should someone make a new attempt at a Superman game and take cues from Insomniac? Probably not. The problem with a character like Superman is that it's hard to make it so the story has high stakes for that kind of character. Personally, these type of games work best with grounded characters, and personally, I would love to see a game like Daredevil be made by Insomniac. But we can only hope and see. Well, everyone, I appreciate you watching and listening to me quickly discuss one of the best games of this modern era. It wasn't a full breakdown, but if you do want a full retrospective look, I'd be more than happy to do so. But until then, happy gaming.